Hello everybody. Now let's discuss the various types of automotive ECUs. I'm sure many of you, even though you are coming from core automotive or core mechanical background, you definitely would have heard the word ECU. If you are working in IC engines or chassis or body control, I'm 100% sure everybody would have come across this word ECU. But nevertheless, I will briefly touch upon what this ECU is, what are the various components of ECU, how exactly this ECU works. So what does this ECU stand for? ECU stands for Engine Control Unit or Electronic Control Unit. Actually, when ECU was introduced way back in 1990s, it was called Engine Control Unit because electronics was used exclusively in engine. That's why it became synonymous with engine control unit. But later, electronic control units were used for various subsystems of the vehicle like body or chassis or doors or infotainment. Then it was changed to electronic control unit. Now, this electronic control unit, what exactly it is about, what exactly are the various subsystems, we will discuss elaborately. The advent of electronics has been a defining force of motor vehicles growth in recent decades. And electronic components first appeared in the field of driving safety to manage the engine, especially in electronic fuel injection. The fuel control was the most important thing for which electronics was used. I'm sure everybody knows this component called CRDI, Common Rail Direct Injection. Common Rail Direct Injection was a real game changer in which electronics was used, which could control the fuel to the utmost microscopic level and give very precise fuel emissions. All right. Now, more recently, more and more, let me take a, yeah, more recently, whole new application domains have surfaced in the domains of driving assistance, infotainment, connectivity, thanks to ongoing developments in semiconductor technology and computational power of the microelectronics. Now, as technology is progressing, computational power of the electronics, microelectronics is growing leaps and bounds, and this is the reason why electronics is used in the various domains. Now, as a result, the percentage of electronics and electrics in cars is consistently increased, and hence it is important to understand the various types of the systems prevalent in car. Okay, I am sure everybody heard of this term called software defined vehicle, and as vehicles are moving towards software defined vehicles, electronics and electric percentage in the vehicle is drastically increasing. Okay, so that is the reason it is important to understand the basic electronic control unit. So what is an ECU? An electronic control unit is a small device in a car that controls the specific function such as the engine, power steering, airbags. Lot of domains are there. Even ADAS is using ECU, body control is using ECU, transmission control is using ECU, cameras are using inbuilt ECUs. So ECU is also known as electronic control module, abbreviated as ECMs. An electronic control unit is also known as electronic control module. It is an embedded system in automotive electronics that controls one or more of the electrical systems or subsystems in a car or other motor vehicle. So basically, ECU is nothing but a embedded system. In other words, ECU is like the brain in a car of a particular subsystem. Okay, now just to give you, this may be a very vague analogy, but all these various subsystems which you are doing, every subsystem is controlled by its own independent brain or its own independent subsystem, or its own independent ECU. Now, well, this is not exactly exhaustive list, but in the modern vehicles, these are the various types of ECUs that are being used in the modern vehicles. In modern cars like BMW 7 Series or Mercedes S-Class, almost up to 100 ECUs are being used. Now, I have given you a big list of ECUs that are majorly used in the automobiles. And now, because we are majorly concentrating on ADAS, I have just highlighted this ADAS and autonomous driving ECUs. Okay, and within ADAS driving ECUs, there are again further ECUs like radar and ECU, lane keeping assist ECU, adaptive control ECU, blind spot monitoring ECU. Now, all these things nowadays are being integrated or clubbed into the same ECU. Nowadays all these functionalities are being integrated into the same ECU, but for your knowledge, please understand, still there are some OEMs which are using separate ECUs for every functionality. Okay, so I request all of you to pause the video and make sure you understand or you go through all the ECUs which I have mentioned here. Each and every ECU is an ocean of knowledge in itself. I request all of you to go through this list and try to understand or learn about all the ECUs as much as possible. Now, how do ECUs work? ECUs receive inputs from sensors and other parts of the vehicle. Now, sensor is actual eyes and ears of the vehicle. So, like a human brain, which depends on the eyes and ears, ECU depends on the sensors for the inputs, and it further processes the input or data to make decisions to control the vehicle's performance. ECUs communicate with actuators to perform actions based on inputs. Number of ECUs in car. Now, just to touch upon the number of ECUs, modern cars have almost 100 or more ECUs. Now, each ECU has a specific function that enables the vehicle to operate seamlessly. And ECUs are separate computers or a slightly exaggerated embedded system, but they are sometimes referred to collectively as car's computer. Now, what do ECUs do in a car? The major activity or the major responsibility of the ECU is it works on engine control, it works on safety, it works on comfort, and it works on security. ECUs control door locks and keyless entry, ECU control power windows, ECUs control the airbags, automatic emergency braking and other safety features, and also ECU control the amount of fuel that enters the engine cylinders. Now, let me re-emphasize this. This fuel control ECU is of utmost importance in a vehicle, because without electronics, the fuel injection cannot be controlled as precisely as it is controlled with a electronic ECU. Mechanical fuel injection pump can never control fuel injection as precisely as electronic control unit. That is the reason with the electronic control unit, the vehicles are able to meet the modern stringent norms. Okay. Now, how are ECUs developed? ECU is a combination of hardware and software. Alright, the hardware and software needed to carry out the task required of that specific mode are both involved in the construction of an ECU. And how are these ECUs developed? They are usually developed with the help of V model. In the session about V model, very clearly, all the various steps involved in the V model are outlined, and if you correlate that particular V model lesson onto this ECU lesson, you will clearly understand what I am talking about. These days, it is common practice to invest lot of time and energy into creating safe modules by adhering to guidelines such as ISO 26262. Okay, now I am sure everybody knows what is ISO 26262. It is the standard which outlines the various rules and regulations of functional safety. Now, an elaborate session in this tutorial has been added for functional safety. I want all of you to go through that particular session very carefully, and you will understand what I am talking about. Okay, so during the development of ECU itself, all the various functional safety requirements are taken into consideration, and development ranges from low-level hardware components and peripherals to high-level software modules and AUTOSAR compliant layers. So, software should be developed keeping in mind the AUTOSAR compliance. Now, what is meant by AUTOSAR? Again, there is a specific session for that. You understand what is meant by, you will clearly understand AUTOSAR when you go through that session. Rarely is a module created entirely from the ground up. See, usually ECUs are developed by various companies. The hardcore ECU is developed by some companies like NXP or Infineon, and then software is developed by Bosch or Continental, and later they are integrated to form a full-fledged ECU. Typically, the OEM provides the specs that Tier 1 vendors produce the majority of ECUs. And again, Tier 1 depend on Tier 2 for some stacks, some diagnostic stacks or communication stacks. So, all these things, it is actually a teamwork. Developing an ECU is a major teamwork which involves OEM, Tier 1 and Tier 2. And engineering experts with extensive knowledge of hardware design, relevant protocols, software development, integration and testing for the automotive industry are needed for the development. So as you can understand, for developing a particular ECU for a particular application, a collection of the experts is required. Expert who are experts who have thorough expertise in hardware design. Hardware means the actual chip, the chip on which the software is embedded, and of course experts on the relevant protocols. So people who have thorough knowledge on functional safety, cyber security, their requirement is also there, and of course the actual code developer or the software developer. Output of all these three expertises is integrated to develop a ECU. Now this is the V model. As you can see in this V model, let me take a pen. You can see here software is there, hardware is there, component design and simulation is there, and modulation, integration, testing is there. All these various steps. Now in case you people don't understand about this now, you will clearly understand when you see the session about the V model. If you don't understand what I am talking about, if I say integration or testing, you will definitely understand when you see clearly about the integration in the V model. There is a separate session about the V model. You will clearly understand when you go through that particular session. Okay, so with the help of this V model, the entire electronic control unit is developed. Alright, so it starts from the specifications and finally it ends with the product. Now I am sure everybody could guess or would guess that systems engineering is very important in developing of this V model. System engineering and V model, they work in tandem, they go hand in hand. So while developing an ECU, clear-cut understanding about systems engineering is required, and that's the reason systems engineering chapter is included. Systems engineering I have very elaborately added into this tutorial. Please go through that tutorial or particular chapter several times or repeatedly, so that you can get clear command about this system engineering. Okay, let's continue in the next video.